Good evening. Hello. I'm going to guess that other people got stuck in the same traffic that I did on Peachtree. So the food's out, and if people come in, do make them comfortable and help them to find a place at your table if you need to do that. My name is Winnie, and I'm the rector of this fine church, and I'm so pleased to be with you all this evening. The live stream is going on as well. If you're watching from the live stream, very special welcome to you. Thank you for watching. If you're watching later on the live stream, you missed it. You want to be in this room. This is the place to be this evening. So we are so honored to have our guest and to have our fellow panelist, Dr. Stacia, Robin Stacia from Ebenezer, as one of our conversation leaders. John Vaughn might be out of a job after this evening. This is really fun. So can I start by, is Tori back there? Tori, can you hear me? Well, yeah, Michelle's going back to get her. And Michael and Tommy, stay in the room. When I come to St. Luke's, in my mind, I can feel the Arnold Palmer coming on, and that's because of Michael's magical skills at all beverages, and Tori, that chicken pot pie that you can't stop eating. And we can't just eat it off the table with our hands, and so Tommy makes it all possible that we all together make this all look very easy and have made a delightful evening for us of food. So thank you, and they've also prepped this room for us. So thank you all. And I think Matt and Brandon are here. Is that right? Yeah. Brandon is definitely here, making sure the sound works. Invisible people, thank you. And the live stream is also being run by a human being. So thank you for all the people that have made this, put the day together. Thank you to everyone that's been part of the Ebenezer St. Luke's book study. We have been studying The Church Cracked Open. And I have had this question, so let me just put to rest one assumption. The Ebenezer people on our church book committee selecting the book selected this book. I was so confused by that I asked them to go back and think about it again. And they came back even stronger with, this is our book. I thought it was too much about the Episcopal Church, and I was wrong, as I often am. So that assumption of why we're reading this book, Ebenezer came back strong and said, this is the book we all need to read. And we are so grateful. And Stephanie Spellers has reminded me, I forgot this, that her book came out during the pandemic. It was written during the pandemic and came out during the pandemic. So these kinds of events that you'd normally do to celebrate something like this didn't happen. So yay for us that we're creating this, exciting for us. And then just so you know, the conversation is based upon questions that you sent us at the end of the book study. And so we've worked that into the conversation that we're having today. So a very special welcome to everybody. There are washrooms through here, and this, when you walk out, it's just a square. So you can also go that way and go around, and you end up in the same way. So if you don't want to walk through the front, you can do that. But if you need a washroom, that's where that is. If you need anything else, please do look around for someone who might know. Someone at your table is from St. Luke's. If you're not from St. Luke's, and someone at your table can. Actually, if you go to St. Luke's, will you raise your hand? So if you need anything, these are your people. All right. I'm going to offer an opening prayer, and then I believe that the fine musicians of our fine parishes are going to lead us in some music on a piano that I didn't know worked. Yeah. It takes a team, right? This is from Audre Lorde. Without community, there is no liberation. Only the most vulnerable and temporary armistice between an individual and her oppression. Gracious God, thank you for bringing us together in community. Make us brave to ask the difficult questions of ourselves and of one another and of our institutions. We give you thanks for Stephanie Spellers and her ministry to the church and to your justice. We pray your blessing on this evening, on us, on all we love, and on our city. Amen. All right, y'all, we're going to sing. Yeah. I'm going to turn my microphone off.
It's good to see everyone tonight. Stand as you are able and make a little space if you need to so that you can clap your hands and rock. We're going to do a little What a Fellowship. Yes. Now we're going to clap on 2 and 4 of those. So I need y'all to clap with me like this, right here. There we go. Here we go. What a fellowship. What a joy divine leading. Oh, the everlasting arms. What a blessedness. What a blessedness. What a peace is mine leading. Oh, the everlasting arms. Oh, we are leading. Oh, leading. Safe and secure from all alarm. That's it, that's it. Come on, come on. Leading, leading, leading on the everlasting arms. Oh, how sweet to walk. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leading on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leading on the everlasting arms. We are leading, oh, leading, safe and secure from all alarm. Oh, we are leading, yes, leading, leading on the everlasting arms. What have I to dread? What have I to dread? What have I to fear? Leading on the everlasting arms. I have blessed peace. I have blessed peace with my Lord so near. Oh, the everlasting arms. Oh, we are leading. Oh, leading. Safe and secure from all alarms. We are leading. One more time, one more time. Lead. One more chorus, all right? Leading on the everlasting. Let's let them sing by themselves. Come on. Lead. Come on, sing it out. There you go. Safe and sounds real good. We are leading, leading, leading on the everlasting arms. Amen.
That was the highlight. You could go.
All right.
There's nothing more.
I didn't even know we could play that thing, and then they play it like that. Wow. And I just learned Dr. Patrice just did another degree from Duke Divinity School. Congratulations.
Hey!
Woo-woo. Right. The Reverend Canon Stephanie Spellers is from Frankfort, Kentucky, as someone else here is as well, right?
Yes.
There you go.
There she is.
The metropolitan Frankfort, Kentucky.
That
You got
counts.
neighbors, yeah.
That counts.
Canon Spellers is the daughter of Phyllis, the sister of Gary. Canon Spellers is the founder of the Crossing Worshiping Community at St. Paul's Cathedral in Boston, author of Radical Welcome and Church Cracked Open. Her work has been defining of our generation's approach to the Episcopal Church's mission and is so aligned with who we are here at St. Luke's and who we strive to be, welcoming, diverse, inclusive, experimental, and traditional. Canon Spellers went to Harvard Divinity School as a seeking Buddhist and later to the Episcopal Divinity School after an encounter with the risen Lord on a dance floor in a converted church in New York City. Something to say about that, yeah? That encounter both That encounter, both inside the walls and outside the imagination of the Episcopal Church, can still be seen in her creative evangelical spirit. Canon Speller served on the diocesan staff in the Diocese of Long Island, taught at the General Theological Seminary in New York, has also served as an editor for church publishing, chaplain to the House of Bishops, and served in many leadership roles in the governance of the Episcopal Church. I have not mentioned many wonderful things that she has done, and currently serves on the presiding bishop's staff as the presiding bishop's canon for evangelism, reconciliation, and creation care. And when he was made presiding bishop, he went to find her to tell her he needed her to do this work. She also serves on the pastoral team at St. Bartholomew's in Manhattan. Canon Speller studied journalism at Wake Forest and was an award-winning religion journalist before heading off to seminary. I'm tired just reading it. Her spouse is Albert, who is a school teacher, and an inspiring one. Help me to welcome Stephanie Spellers. Our mics are all on? Yeah?
I think so. No.
Yep. Yep.
we on?
You can hear us? All right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. I'll get it closer. Okay.
Would you like to? Yeah.
Well, I think we have to start with the mystery in the room. First of all, welcome. Thank you. I have enjoyed just every minute I've had with you, but I am also intrigued about the dance floor. And I don't think we can go any further.
I love that.
Right, we know each other. We want to get to the detail of the dance floor. And
Sorry.
in just a short way, tell us about that conversion moment, that cracked open moment.
Say it. I love that you. Oh. Your mic is switched off. It is. That was when it was like, is it on? Off. Are we on now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, see, I could have hidden the story before, but now it's just going to be out there. Yeah, so I like sitting with these two extraordinary women, with all of you here, I'm just overwhelmed. I have such admiration for St. Luke's and Ebenezer, and when Winnie reached out and said, do you want to come to Atlanta? Like, we're always trying to find reasons for one of us to get like to the other. But I was like, y'all are going to read Church Cracked Open, and then I get to come and just talk with you? So this is delightful. It's just delightful. And I was also laughing that, because I wrote the book in about a 7-week period.
Crazy.
During pandemic, so it was like from July to September, basically. About July to September of 2020, and then did a lot of work on it for about 6 months, really, and then it was off to the publisher. At this point, I feel like you know it better than I do. It's like, is that what I said? Oh, why did I say that? So anyway, so it's just I'm happy. I'm grateful, and I'm excited about what I will learn from you, as much as whatever I might share with you. Having said that, I will share with you. So the dance floor, and in a way, kind of like what that all meant for me, and in a way, kind of how what that even has to do with being cracked open by God, too. So as Winnie, did I just say Winnie? As Winnie was saying, I went to divinity school at Harvard. I had come out of studying religion at Wake Forest University, if there are any North Carolinians in the house. And I didn't really want to be around Christians that much. I know nobody in this room has ever not wanted to be around Christians. That's right. But I ended up going to divinity school, but really to kind of study Buddhism, and then I just, through a series of rabbit holes and everything else, discovered liberation theology, discovered people, and at least for me, it was especially queer folks who opened the door to Christianity for me, who made me feel like, if you're still taking Christianity seriously, then I need to have another look at Christianity. And so I was just kind of continuing on that path, and was a community organizer doing faith-based community organizing in Boston, where I lived for about 20 years. And I was at this crossroads, and I knew that I either wanted to pursue becoming a faith-based community organizer, or I was also, I'm fast forwarding quite a bit, I had also become involved in church, and was like, maybe God is up to something in me. Maybe God wants to do something, and maybe that's part of why I've stayed out of church so long, was that when I finally got in, it was just going to be like, straight in, all the way. And so I was in discernment. I was in my own discernment process, which for me meant, let's go from Boston to New York City for a weekend, stay on a friend's sofa, and then go out dancing. And I just knew, it was like, I trust that God will tell me something on the dance floor. If you haven't used that method of discernment, I highly advise it, although it might get you here. So my friend and I went, and we were dancing at a club called Limelight. Now the Limelight, I see some people nodding, so you were there. The Limelight is a former Episcopal church that had been decommissioned in the 80s. And then was purchased, I guess, by a nightclub promoter who made it into a club. And yet, like, when you walk into this place, like, there's still stained glass windows, but they're sort of like smoky now. And when you come into what was the sanctuary, that's just the dance floor. And the area that would be what Episcopalians would call the chancel, or whatever, because we can't just call things what they are. But like the altar area was where they were like go-go dancers.
Wow.
To be, there's something to that, isn't there? And then the choir loft, what would have been the choir loft before had become the DJ booth.
Yeah.
And again, there were folk just dancing, and it was mostly gay men, and folks were just experiencing such freedom, such love, such community. And I was so grateful to be welcomed into that space. And I'm dancing, and everybody's dancing, and suddenly I just was spinning. And it was like a whirling dervish kind of moment, ecstatic spinning. And I saw, first I heard God say, build me a church.
Wow.
Build me a church where my children who are here right now know how much I love them, and know that they can bring everything they're doing here to my church, and that actually they're still in my church.
Wow.
But they may not know it because somebody told them that they weren't. So I heard God saying, build me a church. And then I saw these banners unfurling in my mind's eye, and the banners said liberation, celebration, transformation.
Yeah.
Woo-cha! And I, fast forwarding, I went home to Boston, a day or so later, and started knocking on the doors of Episcopal churches. I was not Episcopalian at the time. I had hung out with a lot of Episcopalians, but I just started knocking on doors and said, I think I'm supposed to be with you all. Because it was a decommissioned Episcopal church. It's like, I think I'm supposed to be with you all. I think we're supposed to do something together for God.
Wow.
And one priest, most of them were like, you should take that somewhere. And I don't know what I would do if somebody came to me with that, so I don't fault them. But there was one priest who said, yeah, God would do that. And he welcomed me in, and they ended up being the ones who sponsored me for ordination. And then the crossing community that I was just blessed beyond believing to lead, we started a church at the cathedral in Boston.
Wow.
And it's actually still going now, 17 years later.
Wow.
And it's a church that is mostly LGBTQ plus folks, mostly younger adults, a lot of poor people, a lot of struggling people, the folks, again, who might not have known how much God loved them, except that there was a church that had been planted to make that central.
Yeah.
So that's where the dance floor took me, and I hope that I never stop dancing.
That is
I
beautiful.
hope never to stop.
Thank you. So I think my next comment is you didn't write the book between July and September. You wrote the book starting with the Swirling Dervish.
Yeah.
Because that cracked open and finding church in a place where church isn't, which is what you speak to in this book, is us getting outside of the walls of the church and expanding who is in the church. I love all of that is in here.
Yes.
So that's probably why it flowed so fast. It's because it had just been already a part of who you are.
And there wasn't a lot going on.
That too. We were kind of stuck in the house.
were
You could
kinda
write
stuck.
24/7. So that leads to our first question related to what you just shared is, if you can just talk to us about that moment, though, when you realized that you wanted to write this book.
So I had been in a lot of conversations with folks like Winnie, actually. We had been in conversations just talking about what is happening to our church, what is happening to our country, what is happening to us. And observing that on the one hand, there were so many losses, these collective and individual losses that we were suffering, but that going through those losses, something else was unfolding, something else was opening up, and maybe it needed to. And maybe some things were dying, and maybe they needed to. And we would never have asked for it. We could not have made it happen, but it was happening. And so all of those wonderful conversations just got me just like going and going. And this was, I guess, my fourth book, and I had worked as an editor for a publishing house too. So it's not that weird, I guess, that for me, I'm like, I've got a question I can't let go of. I'll write a book. It's like I could have just had dinner and talked to more people, but I was like, I'll write a book. But I was so clear that this was an opportunity. And I couldn't find anybody else who had written and kind of put something out there to help us take advantage of this moment, to leverage this opportunity. So I was like, I guess that's me. Wow. I guess I'm actually not afraid of things being cracked open. Even as I was looking around at so much fear of what was happening, I was like, don't people realize what an opportunity this is? I realized, no, we don't. Like, okay, God, so maybe you uniquely equipped me for me and people around me who were in that conversation to wade into those deep waters and not be terrified. What I didn't know, honestly, Robin, is that once I started really doing more of the research, and I spent about 2 months probably doing the research and then those weeks writing. When I was doing that research and the writing too, I actually went into something of a depression. Because, and you all have seen it, and you've also seen, I think, the study guide. Finding all of that, dwelling with all of that, took me places. And I remember I hit a point and I called my editor and was like, I can't finish this book because it just hurts too much. Like I thought, no, I can do this. I can soldier on and I don't mind seeing the hard stuff. But it was hard for me. And I had to get to the place. And actually the chapters on discipleship and, well, really kenosis, solidarity, and discipleship came from my own struggle. Saying, how do you reckon with this? Like it wasn't a foregone conclusion that we could. Like when I was deep in the stories and the truths, I genuinely was like, God, how do we make a way home to you if this is where we've been and where we really are? So I guess all of that just swirled in me, and then it was like being a midwife, honestly, writing it and feeling like all of that was coming together, and then it was just making my fingers go fast enough to catch it.
Wow.
We have some follow-up for all of the ideas that you just shared.
Yeah,
But I'm going to ask a really practical question.
Yes.
Kind of lighten up a bit, and we'll go back,
Yeah,
go back deep.
yeah.
So this comes from this is word for word from one of the participants. One loving the title of your book, and said, excited that on page 1 you define cracked open as God breaking open the church and pouring us out. So here's the statement in question. It doesn't seem that white Christian Americans see this as God's actions. Rather, they're angry and hostile against others, who they feel are the threat to their empires, privilege, white supremacy, and isms. Our community, Ebenezer and St. Luke's, often feels that we are talking to the choir, not those resisting God's actions. So from your experiences, what strategies have proven effective within, and this is specifically, it says white Christian communities, but in brackets it says white. So Christian communities, white Christian communities, to illuminate these cracks that God is breaking open. Is it our role to help them make this connection, or do we sit back and let God? Small question.
Small one. You said you were going to go lighter.
Well, it's not deeply personal.
I
It's kind of, what have you seen? What have you seen out there?
I think I want to take the end of that question first.
Okay.
And that's to say, because the end of the question was, is it our role to walk with people through that, or should we just let God do it? And the reason I'm Episcopalian and not Lutheran, because I was actually baptized with the Lutherans, and I ended up leaving and shifting to the Episcopal Church. One of the reasons was because I needed to be in a church where the theology assumed that we join God. And when I would say that with my Lutheran counterparts, they'd be like, no. Like God doesn't need to use us. God wouldn't want to use us. They have what they call a low theological anthropology.
Low anthropology, yeah.
In other words, their understanding of humanity in relation to God is that God is way up here and we are way down here. And I'm like, but incarnation.
Right.
And the cross and resurrection.
Right.
Like God bridged that.
Right.
Effectively. Like I believe effectively. So I'm like, no, God, whose quote is it? Without us, God won't, without God, we can't.
Yes.
You know, so I'm like, no, God actually wants to work with us. So do we wait for God to just magically turn the hearts of people who are resistant and fearful and dangerous? Let's name it.
Yes.
No, God is waiting for us to join up with God to do that. What are the ways of doing that? I gotta say one of the only things I know that works is like just even looking around this room, and I'm scared to do this, but how many of you know one person with whom you disagree about ideology, politics, etc.?
2 hands.
Yeah.
We're in Atlanta, yeah.
Like, ask me about my sister-in-law, you know?
Yes.
Who's wonderful, but we can't go into the stuff. Except that I have to go into the stuff with her. So I'm like, if you know somebody, then there's somebody with whom you can have that gentle, curious conversation, not trying to convert them, because that doesn't work. Honestly, a lot of the angry people that we're talking about in that question, many of them feel like the liberals are manipulating them, and that the liberals are trying to make them be like liberals. So if they feel like you're coming at them like they're a project, they sniff that out. That's where there's the criticism, in fact, of the libs as being condescending, elitist, etc. So approaching people with, someday you're going to evolve to where we are, that's a non-starter. And there's a lot of that. We do a lot of that.
Yeah.
But instead, can I be practical with this?
Yeah.
So there's actually, there's a curriculum that we developed, and it's not even really a curriculum, it's more like a practice, a spiritual practice of listening across difference. And we developed this practice after the 2020 elections. Bishop Curry was saying, how do we help people to connect with each other? Because we're lost. We're lost right now. And if he'd only foreseen how much more lost we would become, right? But we developed these 4 questions, and the program is called From Many One. And so it's the phrase from many one, of course, comes from E pluribus unum, which is on the back of the quarter, I think. And so it's just this, like, how do we re-knit? Not even re-knit, we were never really a fabric. How do we knit the fabric of American life? And so the 4 questions, I'll see if I can remember these, are what do you love? What have you lost? Where does it hurt? What do you dream? What do you dream? And what we found, and we worked with, experts and stuff, but also just with spiritual practice, to say that if you're sitting with somebody with whom you disagree, just massively, there's a way to rehumanize one another. And it's asking questions and sharing your own story of, what do you love? Like, that person, however ugly their opinions and maybe even their heart has become, at some point it was because they loved something. And then the second question is important. They loved something and they lost something. Now, what they lost might be their picture of what America is. What they lost might be the sense that they were exceptional. What they lost might be a whole lot of privilege that they never should have had in the first place. But it's still a loss.
Yeah.
We laugh, but it's still a loss, and we're seeing play out everywhere what happens when people who have privilege they never should have had lose it and then go buck wild on us. So you have to ask those kinds of questions, but then, and I've done this practice with folk who were, with whom I disagreed and whose lives are very different from mine. And it's been incredible to sit and ask, so where does it hurt?
Yeah.
And to have a grown man, a white guy in his 70s, cry as he tells me about how when he was growing up, his best friend was a black kid. They were 16 years old, best friends. And this white guy, his father threatened to kick him out if he wouldn't break up being best friends with this black boy. Wow. And he wouldn't stop. And so for a while, he wasn't able to live in his home. He's like, I'm that guy. I'm not a bad guy. But when my daughter got into college, but then didn't get a scholarship, and I know it was because a black kid got it instead. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? He's like, but I'm not a bad guy. And so I'm like, wow, some part of you does want this relationship, and you've been told that some black person out there took something from you. And then if you ask him what he dreams is still beloved community. What he dreamt was still, like, if I could just get back to that place where I could be best friends with that kid again. That was some of the best part of my life, was crossing those barriers like that. I'm like, dude, that's God's dream. That's not just your dream, that's God's dream. So how do we get to that together? So that practical piece for me, and there are dioceses and congregations that have taken up those 4 questions and that just do practice with them. And then they come back to church and talk about what it was like to do it. And especially if their church has some difference inside it, then they have the conversations with each other. But we talk a lot about beloved community and we dream it. And my God, I'm here in Atlanta. So.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I think it is important for us to have some practices for how do you actually forge beloved community. And that spiritual practice of conversation across difference, I think, is one of the ways to actually forge that hard-won community of love and sacrifice that is beloved community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I shared the link to it for people that are on the live stream. We'll figure out we will do it as a follow-up. It's a great page on the Episcopal Church's website. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this, the ability to have these conversations across difference, how connected is that to the concepts I mean, is kenosis, solidarity, and discipleship a precursor for that? Because those are those, like you said, kind of the trifecta of action for us to move towards a godlike, cracked open life, right? So talk to us about how we do that in order to be able to have this kind of even insight and willingness to have these conversations.
Well, I think you're right that it does. So much of it comes back to kenosis. And I love being in a room full of people who've read the book. So when I say kenosis,
love kenosis.
you know what I'm talking about. I can sit with groups of clergy and I say kenosis, and they're like, that sounds like seminary. So I'm actually going to read something here that the rector of St. Luke's sent to me.
Oh, yes, we love that part too.
That for me says so much about kenosis. When he shared these bubbling thoughts with us, offered here with her permission, and I hope that permission is still granted. Yes. Gotcha.
We read it.
Gotcha. I keep hearing Jesus saying, very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And there's the King James, this is still winning. Verily I say unto you, except a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. It makes me think, she said. Let it die, the legacies of genocide and slavery that made America. The lies of conquest, the lies of pilgrims, the lies of white supremacy. Let it die. The deceit of redlining, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and from this fetid, rotted death of so much possibility wasted, let us free the America that can be to emerge. You get her as your priest. I'm like, what? And so when we talk about kenosis, and it's not just a spiritual thing, a spiritual idea. It's a practice because things are dying all the time. Are they not? And I feel like, especially when I'm in a room or just around Christians, I'm amazed at how we run from death, as if it's not the heart of our faith. As if it is not absolutely necessary. It's like, baby, you ain't gonna be resurrected if you don't die.
Right.
I don't know a way for that to happen. Even Jesus couldn't figure out a way for that to happen. How you trying to do it? So it's like, it's the deep, deep truth. And this is where my not growing up really like deep in Christianity, I think, helps me somewhere. I'm like, oh, this is one of those like deep eternal truths that's in every tradition.
Yeah.
Is that the thing that you are clinging to will actually be the end of you.
Right.
That the act of clinging will be the end of you.
Yeah.
And so kenosis, to me, I mean, I feel like what Christianity does is it teaches us, it trains us in how to let go, how to let it die, trusting that something else is longing to be born. Something else is waiting to be born. God has something else in store for you, and you will not find it, you will not grasp it, you will not taste it, you will not see it if you're still clinging to whatever that thing is. And for the record, if we start talking about privilege and privileged communities, this is how I address
this is
that.
the follow-up.
She's like, we'll get there. But just to say that it's not just let it die and pretend it was never there, but it's let die your attachment to those things. Let die your attachment, and that's the Buddhist wisdom for me. It's like I don't want to get rid of that. But if we let that go, then we can take up something else. And of course, what God wants to invite us to take up
Yes.
is fullness of life. What God wants to invite us to take up is fullness of life in community, in struggling community, in diverse community. I won't experience all of that if I'm still holding on to this. Easier said than done,
Yeah.
like, obviously. But that's why we need practicing communities.
Right.
No, nobody's going to get it perfect. But even the idea of making sure you got it exactly right and perfect, I kind of feel like it's part of white supremacy. I'm like, oh no, you're not going to get it right. What? You know? It's like, no, we're not going to get this right.
Right.
But we're going to keep going. And we're going to keep practicing it, knowing that God will be in all of that and that we will be growing into the likeness of Christ the whole time.
Well, the kenosis, liberation, solidarity, right? Like those are messy words, like,
Yes.
but fundamentally. So this is the question. I feel like we've been having this conversation for a decade, and I love it. And I almost feel aggressive in the conversation. It's like because we both kind of we have one drum and one stick. Like we've got one message, and ours is different. And so I would love for you to talk to us about how. And the question we have written for you is, we have watched in our communities. I know Ebenezer has, I know St. Luke's has, when we've taken a risk and people left. You know, people left, and we know we did. And sometimes you did the right thing. You know, like you did the right thing. And other times you're like, could we have done it different? We missed them, and sometimes you just know, like we're on the right side of history, right?
Yes.
So when we talk about kenosis, if we just think of this monster church that is a disaster, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Right, just privilege, just don't care about the community, serving themselves, kind of myopic, whatever, fine. But if you've got these places like us that really try to be on the right side of history and to love one another and to risk together, and we know we don't get it all right, like we even have that humility to know we're not 100% there. When you say this to us, and the big and for me is always, and when you're in powerful institutions that can put their thumb on the scale, when there's a lot of powerful institutions doing a lot of harm, I'm not inclined to give up any power at all from a St. Luke's. I want to use St. Luke's power. I want to use Trinity Wall Street's power, right? Ebenezer uses its power in the city. Thank God. How do you think about these ideas? I don't think any of us would disagree with alongside these kinds of institutions.
I love this question, and I love that we have had this conversation for a while. There's a section in the book, and it's the part that I hear the most about. I hear people responded to the most powerfully. The concept of stewardship of privilege. And that, to me, is where, again, like kenosis, solidarity, boots on the ground. Where it's like, so are you telling me that I'm just supposed to give up my privilege, like just throw it out the door, pretend I never had it? And I'm like, of course not. Like, as a straight person, this is my power place is in particular in my sexuality, in that identity. It's also in being a really educated person. I mean, I have a lot of things where I'm like, where I kind of top out. And I could say, well, okay, I just won't be straight anymore. But I am. And I will have privilege because of that.
Right.
So I feel like, and the same is true about my education. You know, like I'm the only person, I was the first in my immediate family to go to college and finish.
Wow.
And since then, only a couple. Like, I graduated more than 30 years ago, and only a couple have followed. Like, I don't come from the worlds that I inhabit, but I'm in them now, and I have privilege because of that. So I can't go home to Frankfurt and say, oh, I'm just like everybody here, and I don't have anything here. Like, no, I have something. So the question is not how do you ditch your privilege? It's how do you steward it? And what I would submit is that communities like Ebenezer, like St. Luke's, you are discerning and in many cases modeling what that stewardship of privilege looks like. Stewardship of privilege, another way of putting it, is putting your thumb on the scale. It is saying, we have the power in this thumb to be able to do this, but not just for ourselves. Because that's the key, and that's the kenotic solidarity move, is saying, when we do this, it's because we've been in relationship with folk who are struggling in ways that we are not. But we'll use our power to liberate or to join up with and to participate in the liberation of other folk, which also helps us get free. Hello. And so yeah, I'm like, no, I don't want you to just give away all your money. I heard just like a week or so ago, about a church, St. Mark's in the Bowery, that you used to serve.
Yes.
And because I serve at a church, St. Bartholomew's in New York City, St. Bart's, and we don't really have much of an endowment. And it's because of all kinds of stuff that went on. And someone I was talking to was like, oh, well, that's like St. Mark's in the Bowery. They don't have an endowment. I'm like, really? Wow. And they're like, yeah, but they gave theirs away.
That's true. That's true.
They did.
Yeah.
And the person, I think this person was actually from St. Mark's, so that was why they knew. They're like, I really wish we hadn't done that. But it was because, like, I mean, there was obviously deep discernment that went on. It could have gone either way.
Yeah.
But it was like, do you just give it all away?
Yeah.
Right? And that's what St. Mark's and the Bowery did. But as a result, some might submit that they lost the capacity to exercise power with folk who needed to be in relationship with a church that could put its thumb on the scale. The weight that St. Mark's and the Bowery was able to put on that scale was less, perhaps, because they gave away their endowment. So,
And I would say in the 70s, because they thought the church was ending. Doesn't it sound like today? That's why I'm such a jerk every time someone says the church is declining. It makes you do stupid things when you think that. So in the 70s, they were saying we have more priests than churches. We're going to end. If you look at the stats, there will be no Episcopal church. This glorious church in the Lower East Side in a community of poverty will not exist in the next generation, so let's give it all away like Jesus told us to. And you know they're still there, and it is so hard to run that church.
Right.
But it's so defeatist when we get in this cycle of despair that has come up in many generations that we will end, especially for the establishment, and it has never happened.
So how will you steward that privilege? That was a harder question perhaps for them at the time. And they were working with what they knew.
Absolutely. Good people.
But yeah, good. Oh my God, amazing. What a heart they had. But what I would submit is that's not the only way to practice kenosis and solidarity. That there are other ways. And that I really am grateful for the ways that both of your communities are doing that. As long as we're not clinging. And it comes back around to that. It's like stewarding your privilege, but not thinking of it as something that defines you, which means that if you had less money, for instance, if something happened and suddenly, endowment dropped or whatever, it wouldn't be the end of you because you know that you are more than that money. You know that you are more than your things because you could give it away because it's not all that you are.
Right.
Because Jesus is at the center, and the resources serve Jesus. They don't define you.
Do you know, a rector of St. Luke's went to go be the rector of St. Bart's at the first time they tried to repair that dome. Just for the file, Mr. Bowers.
Oh, that was Bowers.
Yeah,
Tom
he was
Bowers.
here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go fig. There you go.
So there was so much in that that I'd love to follow up on.
Yeah,
But
you
I want
follow
to
up.
get to
Okay.
a question from one of our community members who it fits. It's the opposite of what you're talking about, where someone posed a question about the what appears to be the triumphant elitism of white trappings, religious trappings, and basically says, I've always been embarrassed that so many powerful people and dignitaries have funeral services. For example, at this particular cathedral, or at cathedrals.
The National Cathedral.
The National
Cathedral.
Cathedral,
We
yeah,
can say
National
it.
Cathedral. Okay. And that building seems to be about power more than spirituality. And can you share with us what discussions have taken place with the leadership of our church about the images that is conveyed nationally by our cathedrals? And we know that if we think about even Brian Stevenson, who talks to us about iconography and imagery and the way in which we position objects to represent the power that we believe we have. And, you know, for us, we just had a couple days ago, wasn't a couple days ago, where a Virginia church returned 2 Confederate names to schools.
Heard about
this
that.
This is the same kind of thing. It's what kind of power are we uplifting? Are we creating as are we idolizing?
Right.
And so, what is the church saying about this? Or what conversations this person wants to know?
Yeah, yeah. I just have to say, like, I thank you for bringing up, I'm like veering just a little bit, bringing up the Virginia schools, taking those names back on again. That broke my heart.
Yeah.
That just broke my heart, because it felt honestly like the cracked open place that we had been in.
Yes.
Like, remember 2020. Remember people marching and finding any way they could to say no to white supremacy. Remember people actually speaking the words white supremacy, many of them for the first time. And we thought we had gone somewhere because we had. We had. And remember a moment when, like, when anybody defending those statues, those windows, all of that, like, they were like, there wasn't a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
And now there is. And it only took, like, so it feels it's like that image of the church cracked open,
4
or
years.
the woman with the alabaster jar and all those pieces lying on the floor. I feel like, damn it, they figured out how to put the pieces back.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
That's interesting.
They figured out, they put those pieces back together with white supremacy at the center. Or that's what they're doing.
Yes.
They're in the act of doing
They're in
that.
the act of doing
I want to
that.
say, like, it hasn't already, it's not foregone. Please God, no. Yeah. But that's what they're up to.
Yeah. That's what they're up to.
So we're having those conversations. I have seen, actually, I think of what's happening right here in Georgia, and I think of the work that the Absalom Jones Center has done specifically around banned books and getting folks to, you know, to stand up against book bans and to retrieve those books and to get them back into circulation, back into the public conversation. I love that they're Episcopalians and just people of faith who are willing to say, no, we believe in truth. My God said the truth will set you free. So if we're running from truth, then we're actually not free. And we're not good Christians if we're running from truth. So yeah, I've been so grateful to see folk who are getting out into that conversation. Grateful for the work that Washington National Cathedral has actually done on its windows. There's I think there's a film that they've
there is.
there's a film that you can watch that tells you about the journey that church went through. They have been so intentional. They could have just said, get rid of the windows and we never want to talk about it again. They also could have said, we're not touching the windows. It's history. And instead, they took a road that required so much more learning and reckoning and creating something else together. And they're still creating. It's still happening. So,
And what they created is stunning. It's just so unexpected. They took
Talk about it.
Confederate memorial windows in the National Cathedral that were put up in the 50s, so not in 1864, right? In the 50s.
Clear.
Took them to, after a long, I mean, I feel like it was years, because I feel like I knew 2 staffs worth of conversations with the chapter. But what they produced, I can't remember the name of the artist. They're images of protest, of black people protesting. Isn't that interesting? Like in these really, most of these windows are so staid, and it is literally of people with signs in the National Cathedral. Like the act of protest has been memorialized. It's gorgeous. So unexpected.
So that can happen. That can absolutely happen. Those conversations are happening. The transformation is happening. But we have to keep our foot. Like we have to keep at it, because there's so many forces that are wanting to turn it back and put the pieces back together again for that same old jar with white supremacy at the center.
And there, I mean, just as a comment on that question,
Yeah.
from my perspective, and this, you won't be surprised by my values in this. Like, I want Jimmy Carter to be buried from that cathedral.
Yeah.
I want to. I don't know if he will. It probably is too modest to do it, but I think our country sort of demands it. That you. I think you got to go there.
State funerals.
Like when it speaks our values, the heft of the institution is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's when it doesn't that it's the heaviness of it,
Yeah.
right? Is so bleak.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I get excited that there's so many Episcopal institutions talking about reparations. And part of it is because I feel like, wow, if a church with this kind of history, this kind of weight, the weightiness of that institution, if that church stands up and says, we will be fearless in speaking truths and unearthing truths, I feel like that creates a model or an opportunity for the rest of America to do that, which again is a part of it's like, wow, well, if those institutions are using that power in ways that are in alignment with the gospel and with our values, please do. Please do.
Sorry, are you supposed to go?
No.
Is it me? So this is a smaller question in some ways. So we've talked about institutional life and the stewardship of privilege. Can we talk about solidarity individually?
Yes.
Like, what does that look like? So if we model Christ's life in terms of building relationships based on love and embracing the spark of Christ in one another and relying less on kind of the trappings of our system, how do you do that? And are we required to do it? Like, do we Mother Teresa? Like, how do we do this?
Right. Right.
I'm inspired by the Mother Teresas. I also sometimes wish that we didn't have the extremes like that, because it makes it look like, well, that's not something I could ever do.
Right.
And it's why I wanted to introduce some of the figures in Church Cracked Open, like that chapter, The Shards of Light, where I think it's important for us to see some stories and some examples of people who are still like witnessing in ways that are beyond what most of us would ever be called toward, but a little closer. And so it's like, I mean, the example that I offer, I guess, in my own life is, and it's hard, it's painful, but it's the story with my brother. And feeling like there's one world where I could have just done the cutoff and said, your life is so different from mine that I can't even go there anymore. And actually, I think even fast forwarding or whatever, like, I don't even think that he was in jail yet. And when this book came out, I can't remember. He ended up in jail after this, after my mom died. Actually, she died 2 years ago, and then my brother was in jail within 6 months of mom dying.
Wow.
And it has been a solidarity practice for me to stay in relationship with him, realizing that there is something that he knows about the world that I will never understand, but that I need to. That my picture of the world is not whole unless I can, to some degree, see it through whatever lens he's making real to me. And I don't want to see it, but I need to. And that relationship has actually cracked me open and kept me open. So that's a really, I guess, like a really personal example of solidarity, but but I think that solidarity is it's also, I think, what happens when, like, there are churches, actually, this may be an interesting example of it, but that there are churches, my aunt goes to an Episcopal church in Frankfort, Kentucky. She just started going there, actually, so I was really excited. 75 years old, she left the Catholic Church and became an Episcopalian.
Wow.
I was just like, and she just said, she's like, life is too short for me to wait around for the church that I want to be in. So I'm just going to go to it.
Right.
But anyway, so she went to that church, and just a few weeks ago, I think, there were several black churches in Frankfort, Kentucky that got these notices on their front porches, front steps, just with some messages that could have been construed as violent. And this little Episcopal church in Frankfort, Kentucky had quietly been building relationship with a black church, one of these black churches. And when they heard about these notes on the steps of the church, they canceled their worship that particular Sunday. And then canceled it. They sent out a note to everybody and said, come with us, we're going over here to this black church this Sunday. And if anything happens to them, like it happens to us.
Wow.
And this is just a little church of like maybe 35 people in Frankfort, Kentucky. You know, I mean, it's not the big guns. But when she told me that story, it was like solidarity. You went and you put your bodies, you put your hearts where you had already been growing this relationship. Somebody who was struggling and suffering something, nobody's gonna, like, they actually, the white churches, some white churches did get those notes. They were like, oh, this doesn't mean anything. The black churches were the ones that were terrified because they knew what could happen. And so that white church went over there. So to me, I'm like, how do I put my body in that place? You know, not maybe not Jonathan Daniels, but like Ascension Episcopal in Frankfurt.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you.
Well, I think maybe the last question, because I know we're just about at time, and this is a big one.
And we just had that yummy
Yes,
dinner, so I
we
feel like we're
did,
all
we
like,
did.
And then we're gonna. You all don't know this. We're gonna sign books after
I know,
this.
we're gonna
So
sign
Stephanie's
books.
gonna go sit at a table back there, so y'all
Yeah.
can talk. and
happy to.
sign some books. Yeah.
So we ended our last group together, of course, with the last two chapters.
Yes.
And we spent time on discipleship and on a way for us all. Turn, learn, pray, worship, bless, go, rest. And I asked, as a facilitator, for those in my group, which one resonated with them most? Which calls out to you as your discipleship strength? Like, what will you do? So I'd like to ask you that.
Oh. So those practices, those 7 practices are what we call the way of love.
Yes.
And it's really, it's a rule of life. It's a way of following Jesus with intention. And actually one of the folks who helped to develop that is in this room. Hi, Courtney Cowart. She runs the Society for the Inclusive Ministry and is based here
We love it.
in Atlanta, and is one of my discipleship, sort of like we've been in those trenches for a while together. But so yeah, I mean it's I guess if one of those
know it's
practices
hard.
is it's like my
Pick
babies
one, pick
kind
one.
of thing.
Pick a
right?
baby, pick a baby.
I mean, like, is it turning toward Jesus? Is it, learning his way and the reading of Scripture? Is it praying and just offering my life like that back to God and asking God to dwell? Is it worship where we're like praising and placing our lives before God, blessing, where we're really giving ourselves away for the sake of love? Go, where we go across borders in order to meet God and the other, or rest in God's grace. I think bless. I hope that I live my life as blessing. I hope we all do. I think we all can. I think it's a shame that the church says that only clergy or only priests even have the power, whatever that is, to announce blessing. I wish we could unleash that so that everybody could realize what blessings we are. And if we just walked around giving our lives away for the sake of love, which is really what blessing is. So that's how I'm hoping to live, but it's also what I love to see. I just get really, like, even just talking about it, I get happy. You know, when I see people blessing one another, and maybe they don't even realize it. And for the record, evangelism for me, one of the ways of practicing evangelism is just saying, I just saw you bless someone. And then let that land, especially if it's somebody who has nothing to do with church. And they're like, I blessed? I don't bless. Like, I'm just telling you that I saw God doing something in you just now. And it lit me up to witness it. So thank you. But yeah, bless. That's the practice that I hope takes me home to God. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Right.
What time is it? Look at us.
Yes.
We are doing it.
We nailed it. We did.
I know. I mean, I think John's gonna have to find another Wednesday night gig. Will you all help me to thank Stephanie Spellers for being with us? Now, I'm going to invite Ken and Spellers to go take a seat at that back table, and then we are going to, in a very orderly fashion, approach that table, buy all of her books, and have her sign.
Actually, before we do that, may I offer the blessing that's the very end of the book? It truly is my hope for all of you, for all of us. There it is. Now, Ebenezer Baptist, St. Luke's Episcopal, friends, lovers of God, may the Spirit of God draw you out onto the wilderness road. May she send you chasing chariots and smashing alabaster beyond all propriety. May she bring you to dark-skinned eunuchs and Samaritan women and young ones who dream wild dreams and rich rulers who long to fit through the eye of the needle. And may they receive you into their homes and their worlds so you might teach and convert one another. And may you enter the waters of baptism together and die and rise in Christ together in the name of the Creator and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Be blessed. Be a blessing.